Ever wonder how we find like the absolute best way to do something? Like mathematically, the best. I mean, it pops up everywhere, right? Like plotting the perfect course to Mars, or something as simple as like a delivery route.
That's a great question. It gets to like the core of something called optimization problems. And to solve these, you need a special tool. And it can analyze not just numbers, but entire functions. This tool is called a functional.
Okay, so functions I kind of get. Like you take an input, you get an output. But a functional, what makes that so different?
Okay, so think about it this way. You have a function, maybe takes a number, like 2, squares it, gives you 4, works on individual numbers. A functional, though, takes a whole function as its input.
Oh, so it's like it's analyzing the entire recipe, not just a single ingredient.
Exactly. So instead of just looking at one point, it looks at the whole behavior of the function,
Huh.
the overall shape, and then it produces a single number as an output.
So it's kind of like judging a whole performance, not just like one node.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example? I'm kind of visual.
Sure. Imagine calculating the area under a curve. You're not just looking at one point on that curve, you're considering all the points together. The process of taking in the entire curve and giving you back just one number, the area, that is a functional. It's called the integral functional.
Ah, I see, I see. So it's like summarizing a whole chapter in a sentence. So if the integral functional is about areas, are there other types of functionals that do different things?
Absolutely. Just consider something simple like checking the temperature at noon. You're essentially using what we call the evaluation functional. It just gives you the value of that temperature function at that moment in time.
So it's ignoring the rest of the day, just laser focused.
Precisely. It only cares about that one input. But this highlights the diversity of functionals. They can analyze and summarize all these different aspects of a function's behavior.
Yeah. I'm starting to see the picture here. It's like functionals are a whole workshop. They're equipped to examine functions from different angles. So if we have regular calculus to work with functions, is there a calculus for functionals?
You're on the right track. It's called variational calculus. It's used to find the best function among a set of possibilities.
Whoa, wait, we're finding the best function now. Not just the best value. That's like next level. So how does that even work?
Well, just like how calculus helps us find the maximum or minimum of a curve, variational calculus finds the function that either minimizes or maximizes a certain functional.
Okay, and why would we want to do that? It sounds pretty abstract.
It's because in so many real problems, the solution isn't a single number, but a whole process or a behavior represented by a function. So think of like designing the shape of an airplane wing to minimize drag, or maybe finding the best path for a spacecraft. These are all about finding the best function for the job.
That makes sense. So variational calculus is like the ultimate optimization tool then. Can you give me an example of how we actually find that best function? What kind of math are we talking here?
One of the key tools in variational calculus is something called the Euler-Lagrange equation. Too complex to go into detail now, but essentially it helps us find the function that minimizes a special type of functional. We call it the action.
Action. Yeah,
I
it's
go?
familiar. From physics.
Yeah, exactly. In physics, the action describes how a system changes over time. So by minimizing the action, we can often determine the path a physical system will actually take. It's a fundamental principle in mechanics, optics.
So these functionals aren't just like living in this world of math. They're actually connected to the real world.
Absolutely. And the applications go way beyond physics. You see them in economics, engineering, even machine learning. Anywhere you need to find the best way to do something, functionals are likely involved behind the scenes.
So just to recap here, functions are like tools. Functionals are like workshops to analyze those tools. And variational calculus helps us pick the absolute best tool for the job.
That's a great way to put it. But remember, like any tool, there are rules and properties to consider.
Right. Can't use a hammer for everything. So what kind of properties are we talking about here?
Well, for example, there's something called linearity. If you double the input function, does the output double as well? Or continuity. Does a small change in the input lead to a small change in the output? These properties help us understand how functionals behave and what we can expect from them.
So it sounds like these properties are kind of like a user's manual for functionals. Like they tell us how to handle them.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. They kind of provide this framework, right, for understanding how these powerful tools operate. But the cool part is there's this whole world of different functionals out there, each with its own little applications and quirks.
Okay, now you've got me interested. Tell me about some of these more like exotic functionals.
Okay, well, we talked about the integral functional, which is kind of a workhorse in calculus, but let's look at a more peculiar one, like the The delta functional, it's also sometimes called the Dirac delta function.
The Dirac delta function. Okay, I think I vaguely remember that from a physics course. It's a bit hazy, though.
Yeah, well, it's known for being kind of a mathematical oddball, right? Technically, it's not a function in the traditional sense, but more like a concept called a distribution. But for us, we can just think of it as a special kind of functional.
All right, I'm willing to bend the rules a bit if it means understanding this delta functional. So how does it work?
Imagine you have a function, like any function at all. The delta functional takes this function as input, and it gives you back the value of that function, but only at one specific point.
So it's kind of like the evaluation functional, like zeroing in.
Yes, but there's a key difference. The delta functional is incredibly concentrated at that one point. Think of it like a sharp, infinitely high spike at that point, and then it's zero everywhere else.
Why is that important, though? The concentration, I mean. What's the big deal about a single point?
It's important because it lets us model things that happen like instantaneously or in a super tiny region. Think about a sudden impact or a point charge. The delta functional gives us this mathematical way to represent these super localized events.
Oh, I see. So it's like a magnifying glass zooming in on that one crucial moment.
Precisely. And that's incredibly useful in different fields, too, like signal processing. The delta functional is used to represent impulses, these short bursts of energy.
So like capturing a lightning strike.
Exactly. It's about capturing these fleeting moments that, might get lost in the normal flow of the function.
Wow, so this seemingly simple concept has a pretty wide reach.
It really does. You see it in quantum mechanics, describing particle positions, image processing to sharpen edges, even economics to model like sudden shocks to a system. And it all comes from this idea of treating functions as these objects, and then we can analyze and manipulate them using functionals.
It's like we've unlocked a secret code or something, like seeing all these patterns and connections through functionals.
And remember, the delta functional is just one example. There are so many different functionals out there, each with its own properties and applications. There are functionals that measure the length of a curve, the curvature of a surface, even the smoothness of a function. Like, the possibilities are practically endless.
Okay, my brain is doing backflips trying to imagine all these. It's a lot.
I know, it can be, but the takeaway is this. Functionals aren't just some theoretical toys for mathematicians to play with. They're really powerful tools. And they help us model, analyze, understand the world in ways that we just couldn't do before.
So how do we even begin to make sense of all this complexity? Are there any guiding principles?
Yeah, one helpful thing is to remember that functionals, at their heart, are just about mapping functions to numbers. They take in all the behavior of a function, and then they simplify it down to one value that tells us something meaningful.
Right, like how the integral functional gives us the area, or the delta functional zeroes in on a point.
Exactly. And while there are so many types of functionals, they often share certain properties that makes them easier to work with. Like, for example, a lot of functionals are linear and continuous. They behave predictably when we change the functions a bit.
So these properties kind of give us a roadmap, a set of rules.
Yeah, exactly. They provide this framework that helps make sense of this otherwise pretty confusing landscape. And as we look closer at specific types of functionals, we discover even more specialized properties and theorems that deepen our understanding.
It's like we're building a mathematical toolbox, and every new functional we learn about adds a new tool to that toolbox.
That's a great way to think about it. And as we keep exploring this toolbox, we find new and better ways to apply these tools. Like in machine learning, functionals are used to define something called loss functions. These are important for training algorithms so they can make good predictions.
So it's not just pure math anymore. It's about actually using these ideas to solve real problems. And it seems like functionals are popping up all over the place.
They really are. The cool thing is that the more we explore this world of functionals, the more we find these connections between seemingly totally different areas. Like, ideas from physics can inspire new algorithms in computer science. Concepts from economics find applications in biology. It's all interconnected.
Like this huge web of knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's all woven together by functionals.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm still kind of searching for that aha moment, that like flash of insight that really makes a functional click for me.
I get that. It's one thing to learn the definitions, but it's another to really grasp what they mean. Sometimes it helps to see things from a different angle.
Okay, I'm listening.
Instead of getting lost in the formulas, let's try something a little more intuitive. Imagine you're a sculptor and you have a block of clay. Your job is to shape this clay into a beautiful piece of art. Now, the clay itself represents a function, all these points that define its form.
Okay, I see. The function is like the raw material, the potential to be molded.
Exactly. Now, as a sculptor, you have all these different tools you can use. You can smooth it out, carve it, add more clay, take away clay. Each of those things you do, that's like a functional.
Oh, so the functionals are like the sculptor's tools. They change the clay.
Exactly. And just like how different sculpting tools do different things, each functional extracts different information from the function. The integral functional is kind of like measuring the volume of the clay, but the delta functional is like poking a tiny hole in one specific spot.
I get it. So the functionals are actions that we do on the function. They help us see the hidden properties.
Precisely. And the cool thing is that we can combine these actions in so many ways. Just like a sculptor can make anything from a simple bowl to a complex statue, we can use functionals to analyze and solve such a huge range of problems.
I like this analogy. It really helps. Functionals aren't just these abstract operations. They're like tools to interact with functions on a deeper level.
That's the spirit. And the more we explore this, the more we realize how beautiful it is and how much potential there is for discovery.
So if functionals are these powerful tools for understanding functions, what happens when we start putting them together? Can we make even more sophisticated tools out of these building blocks?
Now, that is a fascinating question, and it leads us to some pretty mind-bending stuff. Imagine if functionals can operate on functions. Could there be super functionals that operate on other functionals? It'd be like this skyscraper of mathematical abstraction.
Whoa, hold on. That sounds like a whole new level of complexity. Are we talking about functions of functions of functions now? My head's spinning.
It might sound like we're going down this rabbit hole of abstract stuff, but the idea of higher order functionals is more than just a theory. It actually has some big implications in fields like physics and functional analysis.
Okay, you've got me curious, but I need a little help here. Can you give me a real example of how these superfunctionals might work?
Let's say you have a functional that measures how smooth another functional is. In certain parts of math, we need to make sure our calculations don't go haywire. This smoothness measure helps us do that.
So we're like judging the judges,
Yeah.
evaluating the evaluator.
Exactly. And these higher order functionals open up all these new possibilities for analyzing and understanding these complex systems. For instance, in quantum field theory, the study of the fundamental building blocks of the universe, well, functionals and their higher order counterparts are essential. They help describe the interactions between particles and fields.
So we've gone from finding the best route for a delivery truck to the mysteries of the universe. It's pretty amazing how these seemingly abstract ideas have such a big impact.
It really shows how powerful math is at connecting seemingly unrelated areas. And really, we've only just scratched the surface here. There's still so much to explore with functionals.
This has been an incredible journey. From everyday problems to the fundamental nature of reality, it's clear that functionals are more than just math equations. They're powerful tools. They help us shape, analyze, and understand the world around us.
I completely agree. And who knows what incredible discoveries are still out there. As we continue to explore this fascinating world of mathematical thought,